The lights in the movie theater flickered softly, casting a warm, inviting glow over the bustling crowd. Emily stood at the concession stand, glancing nervously at the menu as the scent of buttered popcorn filled the air. Her son, Max, tugged. At her sleeve, his excitement palpable. He'd been looking forward to this day for weeks, finally getting to see the latest superhero movie. It was supposed to be a simple, fun outing, a chance to relax and enjoy some time together after all, the struggles they'd faced as a family. Max's wide blue eyes sparkled as he gazed at the towering display of snacks. "Mom, can we get popcorn?" he asked, his voice full of anticipation. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had been hoping that the money in her wallet would stretch far enough to cover the tickets, but she hadn't planned for the extra expense of snacks. She reached into her bag, feeling the cold metal of the coins inside, hardly enough for anything more than the bare essentials. Her mind raced. The last few months had been incredibly tough. She'd been working 2 jobs, juggling long hours and endless stress to make ends meet, all while trying to give Max a sense of normalcy and stability. But today, it was all supposed to be different. It was supposed to be their special day. Max looked up at her, his face lighting up in pure excitement. He didn't notice her hesitation, his small hands holding tight to her sleeve, his eyes hopeful. "I want the big one, Mom. Please?" Emily forced a smile, but inside her stomach twisted in knots. She felt like the worst mother in the world. How could she disappoint him now? How could she explain that once again there just wasn't enough? "I'm sorry, sweetie," she said softly, her voice faltering. "We can't get the popcorn today." Max's face fell instantly, his enthusiasm evaporating like mist in the morning sun. He didn't say anything at first, but Emily could see the disappointment in his eyes. It was like a silent plea, a child's unspoken understanding that sometimes things just weren't as simple as they seemed. Behind her, the line at the concession stand continued to grow, people chattering excitedly as they placed their orders. Emily felt small in the middle of it all. The world seemed so loud, so full of life, while she was stuck in a quiet moment of failure. She looked around for any sign of hope, anything that could save the day, but there was nothing. Just the cold, hard reality of what she could and couldn't afford. A voice from behind her broke through the noise. "Is everything all right?" Startled, Emily turned around. Standing there looking at her with kind, concerned eyes was a man. He was tall, dressed casually in a black leather jacket and jeans. His face was familiar. She knew she'd seen him somewhere before, but for a moment, she couldn't quite place him. The warmth in his gaze, however, was unmistakable. I think we're fine," Emily stammered, trying to hide the shame she felt. "Just having a bit of a moment, I guess." Max, oblivious to the stranger, was still staring longingly at the popcorn machine. Emily's heart ached as she watched him, wishing more than anything that she could make this one little wish come true. The man smiled softly, then nodded toward the snack counter. "I couldn't help but overhear. You know, popcorn's not the most expensive thing here." Emily blinked, a little taken aback by the comment. I just don't have enough," she admitted, her voice small. The man's eyes softened, and he leaned forward just a little, as if he truly cared about what she was saying. "Well," he said slowly, "how about I take care of that for you? Just a little treat for you and your son." Emily froze. Her first instinct was to decline. She didn't know this man, and people didn't just offer to buy things for strangers, did they? It felt odd, almost too good to be true. But there was something in his demeanor, something kind and genuine, that made her hesitate. Max turned to look at Emily, his eyes wide, a glimmer of hope creeping back into his face. "Really?" he asked the stranger, his voice full of disbelief. The man nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Really?" Emily swallowed hard, torn between pride and gratitude. She had never been one to accept charity, but the thought of seeing her son smile again, the joy in his eyes, was too much to pass up. "Thank you," Emily said quietly, the words barely escaping her lips as she tried to hold back tears. She felt an overwhelming rush of emotion, not just because of the kindness of a stranger, but because for a brief moment she felt like things might be okay, maybe, just maybe. She wasn't alone in this after all. As the man paid for the popcorn, Max jumped up and down excitedly. Emily glanced at him, trying to find the right words. But she didn't have to. The moment spoke for itself. The stranger, who had introduced himself as Keanu, handed over the large bucket of popcorn to Max with a wink. "Enjoy the movie, you two," he said, his voice warm and sincere. Emily smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, again this time with more conviction. As Keanu walked away, Emily watched him for a moment, still unsure how this had all happened. Who was he really? And why had he gone out of his way to help them? She shook her head in disbelief. It was just a small act of kindness, but to her it felt like something much more significant, a reminder that there were still good people in the world. "Mom, we've got popcorn!" Max cheered, pulling her attention back to the present. His joy was infectious, and Emily couldn't help but laugh. "Yes, we do," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, we do." As they made their way to their seats, Emily couldn't help but wonder how this one act of kindness would change their day, and maybe even their lives, forever. Have you ever had a moment when a stranger changed everything? Tell me about it in the comments below. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories that remind us there's still good in the world. As Emily and Max settled into their seats in the dimly lit theater, the excitement of the movie looming ahead helped distract Emily from the overwhelming emotions swirling inside her. Max, still clutching his bucket of popcorn with a wide grin, practically bounced in his seat. "This is the best day ever, Mom," he whispered excitedly, popping a piece of popcorn into his mouth. Emily smiled and squeezed his hand, trying to keep her own emotions in check. She had always tried to be strong for Max, but sometimes it felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on her shoulders. Days like today, when she couldn't even afford a simple treat for her son, reminded her just how hard things had become. The lights dimmed, and the opening credits began to roll on the screen. The theater buzzed with excitement as the crowd settled in for the show. But despite the loud laughter and chatter of other families around them, Emily felt strangely disconnected, her thoughts drifting back to the encounter with Keanu. Why would he help us? She wondered. Who was he really, Keanu Reeves? The name alone still felt surreal. She had seen him on the big screen for years, admired his roles in action movies and heartfelt dramas, but never in a million years did she imagine she would be on the receiving end of his kindness. As the film began, Emily's thoughts wandered. She couldn't help but replay the moment over and over again in her head. Keanu's smile, his calm voice, and that undeniable warmth in his eyes. It was almost as if he had known exactly what she was going through. Maybe it was just a lucky coincidence, but deep down, Emily felt like there was more to it. She felt like he had given them more than just popcorn. He had given them hope. But just as quickly as that hope began to grow, it was interrupted by the sudden reminder of her reality. The movie played on, but Emily couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in her chest. Max, still enjoying his popcorn and engrossed in the action on the screen, didn't notice her distraction. Emily's phone buzzed in her bag, pulling her back to the harsh realities of life. She hesitated for a moment before pulling it out, her fingers trembling slightly as she unlocked the screen. It was an email. Her heart sank as she read the subject line. Final notice, overdue rent payment. The email went on to remind her that she had missed another payment, and if she didn't make it up soon, she risked losing their apartment. Emily's stomach twisted. She had known this day was coming. The pressure had been building for months. Rent, utilities, groceries, Max's school supplies. It all seemed to pile up higher and higher while her bank account continued to dwindle. "Mom, are you okay?" Max's voice broke through her thoughts, and Emily snapped her phone shut quickly, trying to hide her anxiety. "Yeah, sweetie, I'm fine," she lied, forcing a smile as she looked down at him. Max's innocent face, so full of joy and excitement, only made Emily feel worse. She knew how hard it was for him to understand, how hard it was for him to grasp the weight of the world she was carrying. As the movie continued, Emily's mind kept racing. She felt like she was drowning in bills, responsibilities, and the constant pressure to make everything work for Max. It wasn't just about the popcorn anymore. It was about the reality that, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't. Give Max everything he deserved. Every time she thought she had it all under control, something else seemed to slip through her fingers. And now, this looming threat of eviction was the final blow she didn't know how to handle. Max, still completely oblivious to her internal turmoil, leaned against her and whispered, "This movie is awesome, Mum." Emily gave him a tight squeeze, forcing herself to focus on the present. For him. For this moment. She couldn't let him see how stressed she was. He deserved to enjoy this day, even if she couldn't shake the heavy thoughts clouding her mind. The film continued to play, but Emily's thoughts were far away. She couldn't help but think about Keanu, his kindness, his generosity. Was this a sign, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, things could get better? But the harsh reality of her financial struggles loomed over her, pulling her back into a cycle. Of worry. How am I going to get through this? She whispered under her breath, her fingers tightening around the armrest. But then something unexpected happened. A soft voice, gentle and comforting, spoke from behind her. "Excuse me, Mom. Are you okay?" Emily froze. She knew that voice instantly. It was Keanu. She turned around slowly, surprised to see him standing there in the dim light of the theater. He had a concerned look on his face, and despite the dimness of the theater, his kindness was almost tangible. I didn't want to interrupt your movie," he said with a slight grin. "But you seemed a little off when I passed by. Is everything all right?" Emily blinked in shock. How could he know? She hadn't said anything, hadn't made a sound. She thought she'd been doing a good job of hiding her worries. But Keanu's eyes, warm and kind, seemed to look straight through her facade. She felt a lump rise in her throat as she tried to smile. But the truth was, she was far from okay. "I'm fine," she said softly, her voice betraying her. Just a lot on my mind." Keanu nodded slowly, his expression softening. "I understand. Life can get pretty heavy sometimes, can't it?" Emily swallowed hard. She didn't know what to say. He had no idea what her life had been like, how much she had sacrificed, how much she had struggled to keep things afloat. But before she could say another word, Keanu spoke again. "I know it might sound strange," he said gently, "but if there's anything I can do, Tilled, I'm here. Sometimes a little help can make all the difference." Emily's heart skipped a beat. His words, so simple yet so powerful, echoed in her mind. A little help. Could she accept it? Could she take the help of a stranger, someone who had no reason to care about her and Max, and let it change their lives? For a moment everything felt still. The noise of the theater, the hum of the movie playing on the screen, all faded into the background as Emily processed his words. Then, without thinking, she said, Maybe we could talk after the movie?" Keanu smiled, his eyes twinkling. "I'll be around. Let me know if you need anything." As he walked away, Emily felt a strange mix of gratitude and hesitation. Could she really take him up on his offer? Was it okay to let someone into her life when everything felt so broken? Max's voice pulled her from her thoughts once again. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, his little hand on her arm. Emily looked down at him, forcing a smile. "Yeah, sweetie, I'm okay. Let's watch the movie." But in her heart something had shifted. Something deep inside her told her that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected kindness from a stranger was the beginning of something that could change everything. Have you ever had a moment where you didn't know whether to accept help or push it away? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. The best is yet to come. The movie finished. The lights slowly flickered on, and the theater buzzed with excited chatter as people stood up, gathering their belongings. Max was practically bouncing in his seat, recounting his favorite parts of the film, while Emily sat quietly beside him, her mind racing. The encounter with Keanu still lingered in her thoughts, heavy like an unanswered question. "Mom, that was amazing," Max cheered, grinning from ear to ear as he gathered up his empty popcorn bucket. "Can we come back next weekend?" Emily chuckled softly, her heart swelling with love for her son. Despite everything, he remained blissfully unaware of the struggles they faced every day. He only saw the fun of the moment, the joy of the day. Emily wished she could preserve that innocence for him forever. shield him from the weight of the world that she carried on her shoulders. "Of course, sweetie," Emily replied, her voice warm. "We'll figure it out." Max's eyes sparkled as they left the theater, his excitement over the movie still palpable. But as they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The encounter with Keanu had done more than just brighten their day. It had opened a door, one that Emily wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. As they approached their car, Emily spotted him again. Keanu. He was standing by a bench near the parking lot, just beyond the theater's exit, as if he had been waiting. He smiled when he saw her, his face still kind and calm. But now there was something deeper in his eyes, a silent understanding, as if he knew she had been thinking about his offer. Max, oblivious to the situation, was still caught up in his post-movie excitement, chattering about the fight scenes. But Emily felt a pang of unease as she walked toward Keanu. She didn't know what to expect, or even if she was ready for what this moment could bring. "Hi again," she said, forcing a small smile, feeling a bit awkward. "I didn't expect to. See you here." Keanu smiled warmly, stepping toward her. "I'm glad I caught you before you left. You seemed like you could use someone to talk to." There it was again, the kindness in his voice that felt so different from anything Emily had experienced. It was the type of kindness that made her feel both grateful and exposed, like someone had seen through the walls she had built around herself. Emily hesitated for a moment, her mind racing. She could walk away now, brush it off, pretend everything was fine, or she could open up. Her eyes flickered down to Max, who was bouncing on his heels, still lost in his thoughts. She felt a sudden rush of emotion. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about him, her son, and giving him a future. She couldn't keep living in this cycle of struggle, uncertainty, and pride. She needed help, whether she wanted to admit it or not. I didn't think I'd hear from you again," Emily said quietly, her voice shaky. "I didn't know if I could accept your offer." Keanu nodded thoughtfully, his gaze steady. "I understand. People don't always like to accept help, especially when they don't know where it's coming from. But sometimes we all need a little support. Life doesn't always play out the way we expect, but that doesn't mean we have to do it alone." Her chest tightened as his words sank in. It was as if he understood exactly what she had been struggling with, how every day felt like a fight to stay afloat, how difficult it was to ask for help, and yet how desperate she was to find a way to give Max something better. Emily glanced down at Max again, her heart swelling with love and fear. I'm not sure what to do anymore," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I don't want Max to see me struggle. I want to give him everything, but it feels like I'm always falling short." Keanu took a step closer, his expression gentle but unwavering. "You're not falling short. You're doing everything you can, and that's all any of us can do. But that doesn't mean you have to carry it all by yourself. There are people who want to help if you're willing to let them." Emily's eyes welled up with tears, and she quickly wiped them away, embarrassed by the vulnerability she was feeling. She had spent so long hiding her struggles from the world, keeping her pain locked away, that hearing someone speak so honestly and openly about the need for help felt like a release. "I'm not sure how to take that first step," she confessed. "I've never been someone to ask for help, but I don't know where else to turn." Keanu smiled softly, his eyes filled with understanding. "Sometimes the first step is the hardest, but it's also the one that leads to everything changing." Max suddenly ran up to Emily, his face flushed with excitement. "Mom, can we go to the park now? I want to ride my bike." Emily smiled at him, her heart aching with love for her son. She nodded, wiping the last of her tears away. "Of course, sweetie. Let's go." Before she could turn to leave, Keanu spoke again, his voice calm, but filled with a quiet urgency. "Emily," he said gently, "if you ever need someone to talk to or if you want some help, you can reach out. I mean it. No strings attached." Emily nodded, her heart heavy with gratitude. She had heard those words before, but something about the way he said them, so genuine and open, made her feel like there was a chance, a real chance, that things could change for her and Max. Maybe it wasn't just about the popcorn. Maybe it was about finding a way to build a better life for them both, with the support of others who cared. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Thank you for everything." Keanu gave her a small nod, his smile warm and sincere. "Take care, Emily, you're doing great." As Emily and Max walked toward their car, the world seemed a little bit lighter. The future was still uncertain, and the challenges weren't magically solved. But for the first time in a long time, Emily felt a glimmer of hope. It was a hope that things could get better, that there were people out there who cared, and that she didn't have to face everything alone. And for Max, that was enough. For now, that was all that mattered. Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't know if you could take help from someone? What was your turning point? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories. The days following Emily's encounter with Keanu were a whirlwind of emotions. She couldn't stop thinking about his words, his kindness, and the way he had made her feel seen. But as much as she tried to hold on to the hope he had offered, reality kept knocking at the door. The overdue rent notice was still there, weighing on her mind like a heavy stone. The bills piled up, and every time she went to the grocery store, it felt like she was making impossible choices. Do I buy enough food for the week or pay a bill that's due tomorrow? Max was oblivious to the mounting stress, but Emily knew she couldn't keep shielding him from the truth forever. She didn't want him to grow up in a world where he always had to worry, but she also didn't want to disappoint him. So she kept smiling, kept pretending everything was fine. But deep down she was exhausted. It was on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, nearly a week after the movie, when Emily decided to take a step she had been putting off. She would call Keanu. Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone, the contact saved in her recent calls list under the name Keanu Popcorn Guy. It felt surreal, like she was about to call a friend, but he wasn't just any friend. He was someone who had touched her life in a way she never expected. Someone who had given her the smallest glimpse of hope in a time when it felt like there was none. She hesitated for a moment, then hit the call button. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Hello?" Keanu's voice was warm and steady, the same as it had been at the theater. "Hi, Keanu." Emily's voice cracked slightly, and she took a deep breath, steadying herself. "It's Emily, from the movie the other night." There was a slight pause, and then Keanu's voice was filled with recognition. "Emily, of course, how are you? How's Max?" "I'm okay," Emily said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Max is doing great, still living in the post-movie excitement phase. He's been talking about that movie non-stop. But I just wanted to say thank you for everything. I've been thinking about what you said, and I think I might need help, more than I realized." There was a brief silence, and then Keanu's voice was gentle, understanding. "I'm really glad you called, Emily. Life can get overwhelming, especially when you feel like you're doing it all alone. But you're not alone. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." "I know," Emily whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've just been so afraid to ask for help. I don't want to seem like I can't handle things, like I'm failing." "You're not failing," Keanu reassured her. "Asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It's a strength, really. It takes courage to admit when you need someone, and there's no shame in that." Emily's throat tightened. I feel like I'm always struggling to stay afloat. I don't want Max to see me break, but I feel like I'm running out of options." Keanu was silent for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was calm and full of empathy. "Listen, I know a few people who might be able to help if you're open to it. There are organizations that can assist with rent, or even provide resources for groceries and other necessities. I can connect you with them if you're ready." Emily swallowed hard, her mind spinning with the possibilities. Could this really be happening? Could things finally start to change? I don't even know where to begin," she admitted. Keanu chuckled softly. "I get it. The first step is always the hardest, but I'm here for you. You don't have to do it alone." And just like that, Emily felt the heavy burden on her shoulders lighten, even if just a little. She wasn't alone. There were people who cared, who wanted to help. For the first time in a long time, She felt a spark of hope ignite within her. She wiped away a tear, feeling a mixture of gratitude and relief. "Thank you, Keanu. Thank you for offering. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just take the first step, and I'll be here to guide you. It'll be okay, Emily." After hanging up the phone, Emily felt like she had taken a leap of faith. The weight she had carried for so long now felt a little bit lighter. The path ahead wasn't clear, and she still had a long way to go, but she finally felt like she wasn't walking it alone. Later that evening, after Max had gone to bed, Emily sat down at her kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her. She found the resources Keanu had mentioned, and she made a list of local organizations that could assist with rent payments, food, and other necessary services. She felt a sense of accomplishment, of something that had been out of reach now within her grasp. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a better tomorrow. Have you ever taken a step you were afraid of, even when you didn't feel ready? What was your turning point? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Things are just getting started. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions for Emily. Every morning she awoke to the same challenges, trying to keep up with bills, navigating her job, and making sure Max didn't feel the weight of her struggles. But this time, something was different. Every time she felt overwhelmed, she reminded herself of the steps she had already taken. She had reached out. She had taken the first step toward change. It wasn't easy. The first call to one of the organizations Keanu had suggested was uncomfortable, filled with awkward pauses and nervous explanations. But the woman on the other end of the line, Sarah, was kind and patient. She reassured Emily that help was available, that she didn't have to bear everything alone. The organization could help cover part of her rent for the month, and they could provide some groceries to help get through the next couple of weeks. Emily felt a rush of relief, but it was quickly tempered by a voice in her head. This is just temporary. This doesn't fix everything, and yet she couldn't deny that it was a start, a real start. Max was none the wiser, his days filled with innocent joy. Emily had started involving him more in everyday tasks, shopping for groceries, cleaning the house, helping with small chores. It gave them both something to focus on, and it also made Emily realize how much Max had grown. He was becoming more independent, and she found herself relying on him in ways she hadn't before. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, at work Emily was folding laundry when Max wandered into the living room with a big grin on his face. "Mom," he called excitedly, "guess what? I got an A on my math test." Emily's heart swelled with pride, and she couldn't help but smile. "That's amazing, Max. I'm so proud of you." Max beamed and sat next to her on the couch. "I've been practicing just like you told me to, and I'm saving up for that bike I've been wanting. I have enough now." Emily paused, the weight of his words sinking in. For the first time, it hit her. Max had been saving his own money. He was learning to take responsibility for things he wanted, even at his young age. It reminded her that, while she had been struggling to provide for him, she had been teaching him important lessons in resilience and perseverance without even realizing it. "That's awesome, buddy," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're growing up so fast, and I'm proud of you." Max looked up at her, his eyes shining with excitement. "Thanks, Mom. I'm going to get that bike. Just wait. We can ride together." Emily's heart ached. She wanted to promise him everything, to take away the stress and struggles that filled their lives, but she couldn't, at least not yet. All she could do was continue to take one step at a time, for herself and for him. But as the days went by, Emily found herself growing stronger. Her phone calls to Keanu became more frequent, and their conversations began to feel more like a lifeline. Keanu checked in on her, making sure she was following through with the resources he had connected her to. He didn't push her, but he encouraged her, and that made all the difference. On one particular afternoon, when the sky was overcast and the rain had just begun to fall, Emily found herself facing a difficult decision. She had received another bill that she didn't know how she would pay, but then a text from Keanu popped up on her phone. "How are you doing today, Emily? Any updates?" She stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She was tempted to say everything was fine, as she always did. But instead, something inside her urged her to be honest. She typed, "I'm struggling today. I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. I feel like I'm failing, Max." The response was immediate. "You're not failing. You're doing the best you can, and that's enough. You're stronger than you know, Emily. Let me know if you want to talk or if there's anything I can do." Emily stared at the message for a moment. Her heart swelled with gratitude. Keanu's words were simple, but they were the reminder she needed. She wasn't failing. She was doing everything she could, and sometimes that had to be enough. She took a deep breath and hit send on a follow-up message to the organization Sarah had connected her to. This time, it wasn't just about asking for help with bills. It was about asking for long-term support, something to help her stabilize, to provide a safety net for Max, to keep their lives on track. She knew she couldn't do it all alone, but maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to. The next day, Emily received a phone call from Sarah. The conversation started with updates on her rent assistance, but then Sarah went on to explain more about the services they provided: career counseling, childcare support, and even job placement programs. There was a chance for something more than just a temporary fix. "Emily, I know this is a lot to take in," Sarah said gently, "but if you're open to it, we could help connect you with some opportunities that could really make a difference." The weight of it all felt overwhelming, but for the first time Emily felt a flicker of something that had been absent for so long: possibility. She wasn't stuck. There were ways forward. "Thank you," Emily said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll take that first step." As she hung up the phone, Emily felt a deep sense of relief. The path wasn't easy, but it was there. And for the first time in a long time, she had hope. Real hope. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about finding a way to live fully for herself and for Max. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you didn't have to go through life alone? What was your turning point? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of Emily's journey. It had been a few weeks since Emily had taken that first big step. The road wasn't smooth, but every little victory felt like a milestone. The first payment had been made toward rent assistance, and while it hadn't solved all of her problems, it had given her the breathing room she desperately needed. Every day, she kept working through the list of resources Sarah had provided, making calls, filling out paperwork, and sometimes even just sitting quietly, allowing herself to breathe and take a moment for herself. It was a foreign feeling, one she hadn't known how to embrace until now. Max was still the bright spot in her life. He had started saving more aggressively for the bike, and Emily couldn't help but smile every time she saw him with his little piggy bank. He was becoming more and more responsible, and she was proud of the young person he was growing into. On a Saturday afternoon, when the weather was warm and the sun finally peeked through the clouds, Emily and Max decided to take a walk to the park. Max had his helmet in hand, ready to practice his biking skills on the cracked pavement of their local park. It wasn't much, but it was a small piece of normalcy in their chaotic lives. As they made their way to the park, Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, seeing a text from Keanu. "How's everything going, Emily? Are you still hanging in there?" She smiled at the message, her fingers flying over the screen. "I'm doing better. A long way to go, but I'm getting there. Max is so excited to ride his bike soon. I think I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel." Keanu's reply came almost instantly. "You're doing great. Keep it up. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Let me know if you need anything." For a brief moment, Emily's heart warmed at his words. She wasn't sure what it was about Keanu that made him seem like such a steady, comforting presence. Maybe it was the way he spoke to her, like he really understood. Or maybe it was the fact that he hadn't backed off, even when she had felt too vulnerable to ask for help. As Emily pocketed her phone, she found Max already practicing his bike skills, wobbly but determined. She watched him, a small laugh escaping her as he tried to pedal faster than his little legs could manage. "Mom, watch me!" he called, his face flushed with determination. Emily cheered him on, her heart swelling with pride as she watched him. There was something so pure about his efforts, so full of hope. In that moment, she realized that he wasn't just learning how to ride a bike. He was learning about resilience, about pushing forward, even when it's hard. Just like her. That evening, after a long day of biking and playing, Emily sat on the couch with Max curled up next to her, a blanket draped over them both. She flipped through some papers that had come in the mail, mostly bills, some junk mail, but one letter caught her eye. It was from the career counseling program Sarah had mentioned. Emily opened the envelope with a slight hesitation. Inside was information about a job training program, a paid opportunity to build skills in a field that had long piqued her interest but always seemed out of reach. The program offered support for single parents and could potentially lead to full-time employment with benefits. She scanned the details, feeling a rush of excitement but also uncertainty. Could she really do this? Could she take on something new while still juggling everything else? Max tugged on her sleeve, pulling her attention away from the paper. "Mom, I'm hungry. Can we have dinner soon?" Emily smiled softly, tucking the letter aside for now. She wasn't ready to make any decisions just yet, but something inside her, something she hadn't felt in a while, whispered to her that maybe, just maybe, this was the opportunity she'd been waiting for. "Dinner's coming up, sweetie," she said, standing up to head into the kitchen. "How about we make your favorite tonight?" Max's face lit up. "Pizza." "You got it," Emily said, her voice bright. As she went into the kitchen to prepare their meal, she felt a small spark of excitement. It was the first time in a long time she had felt like she was moving forward, not just surviving. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she was no longer standing still. Later that evening, after they had finished their pizza and Max was happily playing with his toys, Emily took another look at the letter. The job training program seemed like it might be the key to something bigger, a chance to build a future for herself and Max that didn't feel so uncertain. She wasn't sure how long it would take or how much it would change their lives, but she knew that she had to try. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to dream a little bit. Maybe the light at the end of the tunnel wasn't just a far-off possibility. It was a real, tangible goal that she could reach. As she tucked Max into bed later that night, she leaned down to kiss his forehead. He was already half asleep, his small hand clutching the stuffed animal he never went anywhere without. "Good night, Max. I love you." "I love you too, Mom," he mumbled, his voice soft and sleepy. Emily stood by the door, watching him sleep. For a brief moment, the weight of the world seemed to fall away, and all that was left was the pure love she felt for her son. She would keep going, one step at a time, for him and for herself. Have you ever had to decide whether to take a big leap in life, even when you weren't sure of the outcome? What helped you take that first step? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part of Emily's journey. The weeks that followed were a blur of hard work, determination, and small victories. Emily had taken the leap. She had signed up for the career training program, and while it wasn't easy to juggle with everything else on her plate, she was starting to see a future beyond the endless cycle of bills and uncertainty. It was daunting, but it also felt right. Max had noticed the change too. There were days when he would ask her about the classes, the homework, and the projects she was working on. He was genuinely curious, as if her decision to start something new had sparked something in him. One particular evening after dinner, Max asked her a question that hit her harder than she expected. "Mom, do you think I can be anything I want when I grow up?" he asked, looking up from his plate. Emily smiled softly, the question taking her by surprise. She had always encouraged him to dream big, to reach for the stars, but she hadn't realized until that moment just how important it was to lead by example. "Of course, sweetie," she said, her voice warm. "You can be anything you want, as long as you work hard and never give up." Max nodded thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on his plate. "I want to be a scientist, maybe a space scientist. I want to go to the moon." Emily laughed softly. "Well, if anyone can do it, it's you. The sky's the limit." Max beamed, and Emily felt a swell of pride. She had done this. She had given him the belief that the impossible was possible. But in that moment, she realized something else, that she too was beginning to believe in her own future, in her own ability to create something better for herself and Max. The next few days were filled with early mornings, late nights, and long stretches of studying. But Emily was determined. She pushed through the exhaustion, knowing that every step she took, no matter how small, was moving her closer to the life she had dreamed of. One afternoon, she received a phone call from Sarah at the career counseling program. Emily hadn't expected it, but the timing couldn't have been better. "Emily, how are you doing?" "I just wanted to check in." Sarah's voice was cheerful. "I'm doing okay," Emily said, feeling the weight of the last few weeks lift a little with the sound of Sarah's voice. "It's been tough, balancing everything, but I'm getting the hang of it." "That's great to hear. I've got some good news for you," Sarah continued. "There's an internship opportunity that just opened up with one of our partners. It's a part-time position, and it could be a great way to gain some experience while you're in the program. I think you'd be perfect for it." Emily's heart skipped a beat. An internship? This could be the break she had been waiting for. It was an opportunity to step into something new, something more stable, something that could really make a difference. "An internship?" Emily repeated, her voice shaky with excitement. "Tell me more." "It's with a local non-profit focused on providing support for single parents," Sarah explained. "It's part-time, flexible, and the experience you'll gain could lead to a full-time position after a few months. Plus, they offer a stipend, so it's financially supportive. The possibility of a steady income, experience in a new field, and the chance to make a difference in the lives of others was everything Emily had dreamed of. And more. "I'm in," Emily said without hesitation, her voice full of determination. "I'll do it." "Wonderful. I'll send over the details and we'll get you set up with an interview. You're going to do great." Emily hung up the phone, her hands trembling with excitement. She wanted to tell Max right away, to share this moment with him. But before she did, she sat down for a moment and let it all sink in. This was it. This was her chance to make a change, not just for herself, but for Max too. She wasn't just working toward a better life, she was actively building it, step by step. When Max came home from school that afternoon, Emily couldn't wait to tell him. "Max," she called, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Guess what? I got an internship." Max's eyes lit up. "Really? What is it? What will you be doing?" "It's with a non-profit," Emily explained. "I'll be helping other single parents. And it's a part-time job, so I'll still be able to study, but it's a big step toward something better." Max's face lit up with pride. "That's awesome, Mom. I knew you could do it." Emily smiled, her heart swelling with love for her son. She was doing this for him, for both of them. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was moving forward. As the days passed, Emily threw herself into the internship with the same energy and focus she had applied to everything else. She spent hours learning about the non-profit's mission, helping with outreach, and supporting families in need. It was challenging but deeply rewarding. She was finally seeing the fruits of her labor, and it was starting to feel real. The job wasn't glamorous, and there were still plenty of struggles ahead. But every day, Emily felt more confident that this was the path she was meant to take. She wasn't just a single mom anymore. She was a woman building a new life, one step at a time. And as the weeks passed, the weight that had once felt like an unbearable burden began to lighten. With every piece of progress, Emily found herself becoming more and more the person she had always wanted to be, not just for Max, but for herself. Have you ever had a moment when you realized everything you've been working for was starting to come together? What was your turning point? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter in Emily's story. The months following Emily's decision to take the internship were filled with growth, both for her and for Max. The part-time position provided her with more than just an income. It gave her a sense of purpose, a feeling of belonging, and a reminder that there were still opportunities for people like her to create change in their lives. At Vow's work, Emily found herself surrounded by a team of people who were just as passionate about helping others as she was. The non-profit's mission, to empower single parents and provide them with the resources they needed to succeed, felt like it was tailored to her experience. Every time she met with a parent who was struggling, she saw herself in their eyes. And each success story made her believe that her own story could one day have the same ending. Max, too, was thriving. His grades were improving, his confidence was growing, and every day he seemed more and more determined to reach for the stars. They spent evenings at the park, where Emily would help him with his homework, and weekends were filled with bike rides, board games, and trips to the local library. He was becoming more independent, and it filled her heart with joy to see him growing into such a thoughtful, resilient young boy. One afternoon, after a long day at work, Emily came home to find Max sitting at the kitchen table, holding a large envelope. His eyes were wide and his hands were shaking slightly as he looked up at her. "Mum," he said, his voice a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I got something today. It's an acceptance letter." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? An acceptance letter for what?" Max held the envelope out to her. "It's from the local science camp I applied to last month, the one where they teach kids how to be scientists." Emily's breath caught in her throat as she took the letter from him. She read the first line aloud, her voice trembling. "Congratulations. We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for our summer science camp. Your passion and curiosity have earned you a spot." Max's face broke into a grin so wide that Emily thought his cheeks might crack. He leapt out of his chair and ran to her, throwing his arms around her neck. "Mom, I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to go to science camp." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she hugged him back tightly. She hadn't realized just how much this moment meant to both of them. It wasn't just an acceptance letter for Max, it was a symbol of everything they had worked for. The sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the struggles that seemed endless. And now here they were on the other side of it, looking toward a future that seemed full of possibility. "I'm so proud of you, Max," Emily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You've worked so hard for this, and I know you're going to do amazing things." Max pulled back, his eyes sparkling. "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you. You always tell me to follow my dreams, and now I'm doing it." Emily smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride in her heart. Her son had come so far, and so had she. Together they were building a future they could be proud of. That night, as they sat down for dinner, Max couldn't stop talking about all the things he would learn at camp. Emily listened intently, laughing at his excitement, but as they finished their meal, her thoughts drifted back to the internship. The part-time job had been a game-changer for her, and it had provided her with not just financial stability, but personal growth. She had met people who believed in her potential, people who encouraged her to keep pushing forward, and people who, like her, were trying to build a better future for themselves. But now, the time had come to take the next step. Emily had been thinking about it for a while, and she knew it was time to start making plans for the future. She had completed the training program, gained experience in the non-profit world, and had begun to establish herself in a field she was passionate about. It was time to apply for a full-time position. The thought of it excited and terrified her all at once. It meant more stability, more responsibility, and a chance to truly make a difference. But it also meant taking on new challenges, facing fears she hadn't fully addressed, and stepping outside of her comfort zone in ways she hadn't done in years. That night, as Emily tucked Max into bed, she kissed his forehead and whispered, "I'm going to do something big, Max. I'm going to apply for a full-time position at the non-profit. I'm ready." Max smiled up at her, his face glowing with pride. "You can do it, Mom. I know you can." Emily held back tears as she kissed him one last time and stepped out of his room. She stood in the hallway for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. It felt like the right decision. It felt like the next step on her journey to creating a life she and Max could be proud of. The next morning, she sat down at her computer and began to write her application. As she typed, she thought about how far she had come from that day when she had struggled to buy popcorn at the movies with Max to this moment of taking charge of her future. She thought about how Keanu's words had stayed with her, how the small act of kindness he had shown her had sparked something inside her that she hadn't even realized was there. And she thought about Max, who had shown her every day what it meant to dream big and never give up. As she hit submit on the application, a sense of calm washed over her. She was ready, No matter what happened, she had taken control of her life, and that in itself was a victory. Have you ever taken a leap of faith towards something that scared you but felt right? How did it feel to make that decision? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to follow Emily's journey toward a brighter future. The weeks after Emily submitted her full-time job application were some of the longest she'd ever experienced. Every day felt like it dragged on forever, but she kept herself busy, balancing her internship, continuing her studies, and of course making sure Max's needs were met. Even in the midst of the busyness, there was a sense of anticipation in the air. It was like the calm before a storm, where everything was in place and all she had to do now was wait for the moment to arrive. Then, one Thursday afternoon, as Emily sat at her desk finishing up some paperwork, her phone rang. It was an unknown number, but she had a feeling she knew what it was. Her heart pounded as she answered the call. "Hello? Hi, is this Emily?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is she," Emily said, her pulse racing. "This is Rachel from the non-profit. I'm calling about your application for the full-time position. We'd like to invite you for an interview." A wave of relief washed over Emily. She'd done it. She had made it to the interview stage. She smiled, a little breathless from the excitement. "Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. When would be a good time for the interview?" Rachel explained the details of the interview, and Emily agreed to a time the following week. After the call ended, Emily sat still. For a moment, her hands trembling with excitement. This was it, the opportunity she had been waiting for. It was real now. She wasn't just dreaming anymore. She was taking action, and it was leading her towards something bigger than she could have imagined. The days leading up to the interview were filled with nerves and preparation. Emily spent hours researching the non-profit, revisiting her resume, and practicing her responses to potential questions. She wanted to show them just how much she cared about their mission and how passionate she was about the work they did. Max, of course, noticed her stress and tried his best to be supportive. "Mom, don't worry, you've got this," he told her one evening as she paced around the living room, preparing for the interview. "You always say that you can do anything if you work hard enough. So you're going to get this job. I just know it." Emily smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You're right, Max. Thanks for reminding me." When the day of the interview arrived, Emily woke up early to prepare. She put on her best outfit, one that made her feel confident and professional. She spent the morning reviewing her notes one last time, and then, with a deep breath, she left for the non-profit's office. The interview itself went by in a blur. There were questions about her experience, her passion for the work, and her vision for the future. But there was also something more, a connection, an unspoken understanding. Emily felt like she belonged in that room, like they saw her not just for the challenges she had faced, but for the strengths and skills she had developed along the way. When the interview finally ended, Emily left the office feeling both relieved and hopeful. She had given it her all, and now all she could do was wait. The following week was another long one, but Emily kept herself busy. She continued her work at the non-profit, helped Max with his school projects, and kept pushing forward. Her days were full, and yet there was a lingering sense of anticipation in the back of her mind. Then, one Friday afternoon, just as Emily was wrapping up a long week of work, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the caller ID. It was Rachel from the non-profit. "Hello?" Emily answered, her voice a little shaky. "Hi, Emily, it's Rachel. I'm calling to let you know that after careful consideration, we would like to offer you the full-time position." For a moment, everything stopped. Emily couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She had done it. She had actually done it, really, Emily whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes, we were all very impressed with your experience, your passion, and your commitment. We believe you will be a great addition to our team. Congratulations." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she fought to hold them back. This was the moment she had been working for, the culmination of everything she had sacrificed and fought for over the past year. "Oh my God," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I can't believe this. Thank you. Thank you so much." "We're excited to have you on board," Rachel said warmly. "We'll send over the details and next steps, but we're looking forward to having you start with us soon." As soon as the call ended, Emily collapsed onto the couch, her hands shaking. She couldn't believe it. The job was hers. All the hard work, the late nights, the doubts. It had paid off. She had done it. Her first thought was of Max. She wanted to tell him right away, to share this incredible moment with him. She grabbed her keys, dashed out the door, and headed to the park where she knew he would be. When she arrived, Max was riding his bike around the empty parking lot, his little helmet bouncing with every turn. "Max!" Emily called, waving her arms. Max stopped and ran toward her, a big grin spreading across his face. "What's going on, Mom? You look so happy." "I've got some news," Emily said, out of breath from the excitement. "I got the job. I got the full-time position at the non-profit. I start next month." Max's eyes lit up, and he threw his arms around her. "I knew you could do it, Mom. I knew it." Emily laughed through her tears, holding him tight. This was it. They had done it. Together, they had made it to the other side. As they walked, home hand in hand, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had come so far. From the days of uncertainty and fear, she had found her way to a new beginning. A new chapter was unfolding for her, one that was full of promise and possibility. And no matter what came next, she knew she had the strength, the love, and the support to keep moving forward. What's one moment in your life when everything seemed to fall into place? How did it feel when you finally reached your goal? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to follow Emily's journey.